Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clown World News. We said last week, among other things, well, I remember you saying that you thought, most Westerners, let's say the Western world, still either tacitly support Israel or just don't care. Most people. There have been some polls out, though, and the most damning one would be the American. You'd expect majority support in the United States, right? And something like 53% of people polled think Israel should stop, basically. Just ceasefire, peace, some kind of stop it. Stop your incursion in Gaza and bombing and so on. And the most telling part of that was the breakdown was 53% was overall. You get a much higher percentage. You get a majority among people who identify as Democrats. But 50, it's half and half with Republicans. And then the breakdown is young Republicans is way lower, like Gen Z, millennials, much, much lower. It's only your older 50s and above Republicans who still hold out for Israel is our greatest ally, the narrative, Okay, that was on the US side, and I just looked briefly a bit in Europe as well. It's much higher, like overall population polling numbers.
Always has been.
Always has been. Where do you think is the highest?
Probably Spain or...
It is Spain, 69%. and the breakdown is unfavorable. So that's either a serious dislike, pre-Palestine, just to, stop, ceasefire, peace. And I think that may be reflected in some of the developments this week. It's only words, but it's government statements on what's going on there. There's been quite a lot of things this last week. At EU level, individual Western government levels. The EU has said that its association agreement with Israel is now to be reviewed. So you think words, EU, whatever, but that's an association agreement that was signed in the year 2000. It's a quarter century old. It's mostly trade related, but it's also cultural. And the Spanish PM, Sanchez, is that his surname? They're socialist, lefty. Maybe you would expect someone like that to be standing up to Israel, but he's kind of like he has been the most vocal so far in Western Europe, maybe with the Irish government and the Norwegian government. They've all formally declared recognition of a state of Palestine, those three countries. But he's pushed it further still. He wants Brussels to go further. He has declared that Spain will now actually be on the lookout for and police any weapon shipments that are in transit to Israel. He's declared arms embargo to actually be enacted rather than just words. So the US now would have to be really sneaky to have the ship stop in a Spanish port on its way across the Med to Israel.
Flights, mostly.
Flights, okay.
That's the way it happens mostly anyway.
He's also including as part of this is referred to in the trade association, the association agreement. We need to isolate Israel culturally. They cannot be at Eurovision anymore. That's got shit got to stop. Sporting events, we need to hold them the same standards we held to Russia as. So that's a Brussels level, Spanish level. Just a few other things. I mean, there have been statements from the UK, France. France is always wishy-washy, right? Macron has the uncanny ability to speak out of both sides of his mouth. There's two voices coming out at once. The words end up being word salad, but he's starting to say similar-ish things, at least as London. But yeah, they're the two strongest developments. Like, so then in the middle of it, well, I don't know where you want to go from here. I was just kind of thinking to pick up that point from last week, where we've we went with the assumption that plus ça change, the more things go on, actually nothing's really changed. But I think there could be a sea change going on, where at least what this might suggest isn't that European leaders suddenly have developed a conscience, but rather that the pressure from below and around them is that significant that they're having to speak up about it. And then Israel gets the message and then starts to make counter pressures back. Netanyahu, among all the crazy shit he said this week, he called out by name Starmer, Macron, and Carney. They must have all said similar things because he called them by name in English, a TV address in Israel. What did he say? Just something like, "Don't remember, this is Hamas. They're rapists and murderers."
And that they're giving support to Hamas.
To terrorists, yeah. By calling for Israel to just take it easy. Israel is equating it with being terrorists. Another thing, no one else will have noticed this, but it stood out for me. Remember Dominique de Villepin? His first interview on English-speaking media since, I think, about 2010, when he was ousted as Prime Minister or earlier. He was Prime Minister under Chirac, then was going to run for president, lost out to Sarkozy, and then was pretty much booted from politics by the Clearstream scandal, corruption involving arms, kickbacks to Taiwan or something. That whole trial took place and he was totally cleared. But in the meantime, he's verboten but CNN interviewed him for his opinions on Israel-Palestine. And he's like, sanctions, embargo, as strongly as what we heard the Spanish PM say.
So you're seeing a sea change, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying there's pressure.
Well, yeah.
It's pressure.
So it's like...
And it might be having an effect.
Israel gets to slaughter probably, upwards of 250,000 or maybe 300,000 Palestinians kind of on live TV over 17, 18 months. So 250,000 people, pretty much all of them, vast majority of them, civilians, 60, 70% of them women and children, for 17, 18 months, and nobody does anything. Few words here and there, but we support Israel. Israel's our greatest ally. Then, as that process, that pre-planned process that Israel was engaging in, that started off with killing, 250,000 or 300,000, mostly women and children, then it moves to corralling them all into a tiny area of the place where they live, Gaza, instituting a blockade, basically, where they start to starve them to death. And while they're starving them to death, they're continuing to blow to pieces these newly corralled women and children, men, women and children, civilians. So it's only at that point, when Israel is now almost literally, shooting fish in a barrel, and no one can deny it. It's only at that point that there's some voices that are raised a little bit with slightly strong words of condemnation. And we're meant to believe that that's let's
believe it. Let's take note of it.
Let's say, the idea was like last week, nothing really will change, or you're saying that you're seeing a sea change now, or you're seeing a change or some kind of change, rather than just taking note of it. You're saying there could be a change afoot here.
No.
That's what you're saying.
A change in public official statements reflective of public mass perception. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what
no change in this. I think Israel's response will be to go nuclear. I mean, they will blow up the world before they actually stop. Pretty much. But I do wonder if the trucks were allowed into northern Gaza this morning, like a sizable number of them. Still not enough to feed who's there, but it could be stunt, most likely, because they're also bombing northern Gaza at the same time. They've got tanks in there just massacring people. They've got massive, super long military bulldozers pulling everything remaining down. But trucks were allowed also in this morning, and there's footage
that are being controlled by Israel.
And possibly
private security
ISIS-type gangs, proxies for them. They seem to respond somewhat to pressure and optics.
Yep.
Substantively.
But optics is like I said, it's like, look, Israel, can you just continue to slaughter those women and children in private, a bit more privately? Like effectively doing it in such a way where, their dead, mangled bodies or partial bodies are held up in front of the cameras. It's a bit hard for us to spin that one. Could you maybe avoid the kind of like dismembered women and children, like on the splashed across the pages? Can you do it in a different way, maybe?
Yeah.
So that we don't get that our populations don't have to look.
The problem is
that
the issue is they don't, because they announced
but that's
Operation Gideon's Chariot with express, and then there are express statements like from their finance minister saying we're going to slaughter every last thing that breathes or something to that effect in Gaza, and we're not leaving until that's been achieved. And they're hearing that, and then in conjunction to hearing from some UN body, it's day 80 of a starvation blockade. Just looking at almost like it's almost cynical, but it's like a dry tinder analysis. They predicted that in the next 2 days, right now, 14,000 infants would die in Gaza because there's nothing. Logically, that's what comes next. So I think when you've got people out there, most people alike, they literally can't see reality until it's like, or foresee the consequences.
You mean ordinary people?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, they're not paying attention either. I suppose that's what I was saying. That most of them, but it's either they support Israel, come what may, or they don't actually pay any attention, or they're not even interested. They're hearing about it, passively or whatever, and they don't pay much attention. And the only reason it would actually come across those particular people's radar is whenever their governments are forced to say something.
And they have some other means of pressure. I mean, the BBC can actually, for example, in Britain, can dial up the coverage. They'll still do. They'll still bat for Israel, where they say, "Well, that's what Hamas," the caveat, everything. But still, just by having coverage, maybe they dial it up, and it seems to be happening more or less in conjunction. So it's in Canada, it's in Spain, it's in Brussels. Here's another bellwether. Doesn't get better than this. Bono has finally said something about it. You too, right? So it delivered in a BBC way. I condemn Hamas, but we, as if he's one of the man of the people, we need to get rid of Netanyahu. So that's the kind of half. So he said something. We're at a point where Bono has said something. So.
Which is remarkable. It's I don't know. It's kind of I don't give much. I mean, I would like to. I don't know. It might be useful. It will be useful, I suppose, at this point. It would be a positive, if extremely late, that actually something was done to prevent Israel from continuing to do what it's been doing over the past year and 9 months. But what's annoying and kind of frustrating about the whole thing, and why I'm not really inclined to give any of them any credit for anything they say, is that all of this was completely foreseeable, predictable, that this is where it was going. This was Israel's intention. On October 7th, 2023, it was predictable that this has been Israel. It's not predictable. It's obvious to all but the most ignorant people, or almost anybody who's paying any attention to the conflict has been over the past, since as long as it's been going on, I suppose, over the past 30, 40 years. Anybody who's been just even giving cursory attention to it knows that this has been Israel's intention for the past 30 or 40 years. So whenever Israel then, a day comes along where Israel uses an event, made it happen on purpose, let it happen on purpose, whatever, to justify their long, dearly held plans of genocide in Gaza and dealing with their Palestinian problem definitively. They talk about that for decades and decades, and then eventually an opportunity comes along for them to enact that, and then they begin to enact that, and everybody sits back and goes, "Oh, well, I wonder what. Let's see where this goes. I wonder what Israel's going to do here."
Yeah,
it's like
well, you've also got October 7th wearing off.
But I don't even care. I mean, anybody with any sense knows as well.
Rita, I'm just trying to
understand
the mass.
But even the masses,
I'm not
talking about the mass mind here. I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about governments and stuff. They're completely cynical. They all know and have known for a long time that the nature of the injustice of the state of Israel and what it does and what it's been doing to Palestinians for decades and decades. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Like, no person with any sense or any decency or any morality can see it any other way. And yet they pretended all along, and they continued to parrot their line of, I stand with Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself, blah, blah. So these are people we're talking about, and I give them no credit whatsoever. I give no government people any credit. I give none of the media any credit. And when I'm saying I don't give them any credit, I don't trust them. So and I don't trust that anything they're going to do. I don't put any hope, is what I'm saying, any hope in what they're saying, that it will change anything they do, or that it will have any effect on the masses at all, or that the extent that it might have effect on the masses, it's not going to change Western policy towards Israel.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't think so either. I just try to understand why what's happened. So there were two events in the middle of this. A group of about 40 diplomats, mostly from European Union countries and Turkey and elsewhere, I think, were shot at a West Bank checkpoint on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And the search term numbers have really made the news. Briefly, the search terms for 24 hours, Israel diplomat shooting produced. People could see that. Well, within a day, search terms for Israel diplomat shooting produced something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
That's the incident that happened in DC, when a guy shot dead two young staffers working for the Israeli embassy. It wasn't at the Israeli embassy. It was at
a do
organized.
Here's an example of the list of difference of a day, basically.
Yeah.
Can you make it bigger, Scott? A little bit. Yeah. So you have basically all on the left there. Foreign diplomats come under Israeli fire. On official West Bank visit. These include British diplomats. Israel draws outcry from Europe as soldiers fire near diplomats on West Bank visit. Outrage after Israeli fires, blah, blah, blah. UK calls for investigation after IDF fired warning shots as British diplomats travelled through West Bank. And then 1 day later, 2 Israeli embassy staffers shot dead in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
2 Israeli diplomats shot dead. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. Coincidence?
It took place.
Strange coincidence, yeah.
It took place right across the street from FBI HQ or a field office. It's Washington D.C. I mean, there's not footage of the shooting, but there's footage of the guy being arrested. His name is. There's not been much follow up, but his name is Elias Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Is Elias a
Jewish name? Yeah,
it is. You wonder because. Ynet in Israel, one of the few to actually bother doing any follow-ups. They interviewed the Israeli ambassador to the US, who was present. He was there at the do that evening. And this Elias Rodriguez was at the do.
Mm-hmm.
He was inside mingling. How did he get in? I mean, he got in because, hi Elias, good to see you again. That's what it suggests, that he's
some credentials.
He's been vetted.
Mm-hmm.
Ynet News, so that's Israeli outlet. DC terrorists stalked embassy workers before attack, ambassador says. But scroll down and we'll get the quotes from him. They're calling him a terrorist. Okay. He's a murderer, double murderer. No, sorry, not that far. Let me get that first paragraph for the images. According to Later, who's the ambassador, the attacker mingled with participants at the event hosted by the American Jewish Committee earlier that evening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Scroll down past the media. He has some more to say. That's a photo of him there on the right. That's the ambassador. After arousing suspicion, we don't know, maybe something happened in there. Rodriguez was asked to leave. He later lay in wait outside the venue, ambushed a couple at point blank range, and confirmed their deaths. What they mean is, we'll see in a second, he appears to have reloaded and done headshots. Yeah. Rather than being randomly selected, I'm sure Rodriguez probably figured out who they were or knew them already, possibly. He's something like
Marxist character. Yep.
Yeah, he's a socialist organization. Okay, so he's a lefty. After the shooting, Rodriguez reportedly returned to the museum. That's right, the event was held in the Jewish Museum in DC. Hid his gun in a plant and sat among the guests. Some thought he was a witness to the shooting and offered him water, like after it had happened. Then, and this is where the footage rolls, and people have seen this, when he's being arrested, he started saying, I did it, and shouted that he did it for Gaza, for Palestine. So it was so unobvious or not noticed by others that he was able to. The article goes on to say that he shot them. They struggled. He calmly reloaded and assured they were dead. In other words, he killed them at closer point blank range, but there were no witnesses to it because he sat down at the entrance calmly, and others who came to the scene immediately after offered him water because they thought he was, well, that's curious because maybe they recognize him as an attendee or in some other ways familiar to them. Oh, like, Elias, are you okay? Here's some water. Jeez, what just happened? Well, he's the killer.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm getting at here, but it possibly sus. If there's no more, I mean, is there not, like, within hours of that Luigi Mangione, which we think was framed, the hooded assassin who killed the big pharma executive or whatever he was back in the insurance executive back in January. I mean, within hours, police leaked the CCTV of the actual moments where it happened. There's got to be CCTV across the road from FBI field office at the Jewish Museum. Come on, show us. It was him, right? I'm holding out for maybe not. Maybe he took the rap. Maybe
he was a Manchurian candidate.
Maybe.
But although the timing of it is strange, I mean, very coincidental, but then, like, how would you, I suppose, can you activate someone in that way within 24 hours of the event in Israel, where the diplomats were shot at in Israel, and then you want to, quell that outrage at Israel and bolster support for sympathy and support for Israel via anti-Semitism? Can you somehow activate someone to go and shoot two people? Maybe, who knows?
Maybe
it's just very coincidental. It's just ridiculous. The thing is ridiculous because, like, that picture I showed you, a picture I showed of the two screenshots, both of them were for, like, Israeli diplomats. You know what I mean? the search term, not that was the only search term that brought up those results, but the search term that produced both of those results one day after the other was Israel shooting diplomats. First one on the 21st, 4 days ago, had all the information and outcry from Europe and condemnation from the British and blah, blah, blah. 24 hours later, Israel shooting diplomats. Google search produces 2 Israeli embassy staff are shot, and then there's all sorts of, poor Israel and anti-Semitism must be, so it's super, super suspect. I mean, it's very lucky for Israel, let's say. It's very, very lucky in a certain sense, because this obviously is the problem Israel is having right now, is like you were saying earlier on, is an optics problem. It's a propaganda and an optics problem. So that's the main threat to them. That's the only threat. That's a clear and present danger to Israel right now, is optics and propaganda and information, the information war, basically. Nothing else is a problem, because obviously they can keep getting weapons from the US. They will keep getting weapons from the US. They'll keep getting diplomatic support and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that you can, the danger, the threat to Israel is through public opinion. So here you have, now it's only one aspect of it, obviously, in the sense that, they've been getting very negative public opinion over the past, negative public opinion, let's say, to some extent or another, much less than they should have been getting, but they've been getting negative public opinion, negative propaganda, to some extent, much less, like I said, than they should have over the past 18, 19 months, since they've been bombing the crap out of Gaza and killing Palestinians. But this is an element where it's at that kind of diplomatic level or at the governmental level, where you'd have a possibility of, in government circles, in Western government circles, you would have, maybe people talking and saying Israel is going a bit far. Maybe they need to do something about them. Chit chat amongst the lower diplomatic classes or lower political classes in Western countries, and that's, maybe that's seen as much more important to Israel from the Israeli point of view. It's much more important to keep the political narrative, basically, or the political support, let's say, intact, because that's the one that in Western countries, that's the one that shapes public opinion in Western countries. Basically, you have to keep, basically, not just the governments themselves. When you say government, when you say Western governments, what do you mean? Do you mean just the cabinet or the prime minister's office, or do you mean the whole kind of substrata of diplomats and political appointees and political workers and all that kind of stuff? You need to keep that. That's an echo chamber in a lot of in most of these countries, right? They all have their own. There's a messaging that goes out and messaging that comes down from the top that they all adhere to, right? But it can also, if it starts to be infected by the wrong message, let's say, or the wrong speak or wrong talk about Israel starts to happen within those levels, it can filter through the system and whatever, and you can have a diplomatic or a political problem, an actual political problem for Israel. And then you're screwed, because if that does change, then you get different messaging from them to the public, and then you have a sea change in public, and it all goes wrong, basically. As long as you keep the politicians and the political classes and that whole political milieu pro-Israel, then at least the Israelis believe that doesn't matter what public opinion thinks. Public opinion has always been against us. Those guys have always been against us. I don't care what the average European person, average Spanish person, average French person cares. We only care to make sure that the governments in those countries think about us and keeping them online, on the right page. And this event where they're attacked in the West Bank, diplomats from different European countries were shot at.
Warning shots. Yeah.
Were fired at, effectively, by the IDF. Well, that then becomes personal, you know what I mean? It's like, well, hang on a minute, what the fuck's going on here? You know what I mean? They're having a go at us. It's very petty in a certain sense, right? We'll support Israel. We don't care if they slaughter Palestinians. It's fine, whatever. It's just Israel has a right to defend itself, and they do that for 18 months. But then, as soon as one of their own gets shot at by the IDF, suddenly it's all, now what you're doing is bad. Not because of what you're doing, but because you're pissing us off. And then, so for that, to the extent that that was a problem, well, that created a diplomatic issue that Israel felt it is necessary to do something about this, to try and correct this swing towards, anti-Israel bias amongst European politicians, the European political class. Well, yeah, the only thing you really can do is to bolster the sympathy or get back the sympathy or the support. Is traditionally what they do is they coincidentally end up having
becoming the victim again. Something that brings them back. Remember, we're the victim.
Some Jew or or Jewish, building or a synagogue or something is attacked.
Yeah.
So it's amazingly coincidental. It's bizarrely coincidental. I don't know how it happens.
Yeah.
But it's just weird.
Then Netanyahu gave his second televised speech in English of the week. Do you want to listen to it? I don't know, but let's see. This is the one where he says that. I really think it happened in the US, so it's really geared at America. It can only have a decent effect there, a chilling effect on dissent. I'm keeping that political strata on side because Lubishkevsky said the important thing about them is maybe you've got your psychos at the top or in the shadows. They don't believe the narratives, of course, the psychos, but the next important tranche is the 12%. They have to believe because they believe narratives and they partially humanize them by believing them, and then they enforce the rest of us. So when those ones are getting shot at or starting to waver, that's when something has to kick in. Mm-hmm. So he gave his second speech of the week. How long is it? Yeah, go ahead.
For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to annihilate the Jewish people who've been in the land of Israel for 3,500 years.
Shut up, you dickhead.
I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. Well, for 18 years, we had a de facto Palestinian state. It's called Gaza.
You're right.
And what did we get? Peace? No. We got the most savage slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. You won't be surprised to learn that Hamas thanked President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer and Carney for demanding that Israel end its war in Gaza immediately. Hamas was right to thank them, because by issuing their demand, replete with a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas, these three leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power. They want Israel to stand down and accept that Hamas's army of mass murderers will survive, rebuild, and repeat the October 7th massacre again and again and again, because that's what Hamas has vowed to do.
Yeah. Hamas. So, but the keynote, the Free Palestine is now Heil Hitler. Right. In reality, of course, the world leader by far in assassinating diplomats of other countries is Israel. Mm-hmm. People are making TikTok videos about it, actually going all the way back to King David Hotel and the Haganah and so on. They've whacked. And that's only the ones that now have, a Wikipedia page about it.
Yep.
Then there's a whole other subset where it's, the former UN Secretary General in Africa, forget his name, the Swedish guy, probably Israel, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
And you're talking about mass murderers. Who are the mass murderers? Well, Netanyahu has presided over the slaughter of probably upwards of 250,000, 300,000, mostly women and children over the past 18 months. So, does simple mathematics not, is that anti-Semitic as well then, I suppose, to point out simple mathematics that maybe 200 times the amount of people killed on October 7th does not make you a mass murderer? But if you kill 1,000 people, let's say, you're a mass murderer. If you kill 200,000 people, you're not a mass murderer at all. And especially We've talked before about the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. That's, there's been some information. The fact that when some information comes out about that to validate the fact that at least a certain number, few hundred maybe, we talked about it in the previous show, were actually killed by the Israelis themselves as part of the Hannibal Directive, i.e. you're not allowing any hostages or trying to prevent any hostages being taken by the Palestinians. So you kill everybody. For me, it's very likely that, vast majority of the people on October 7th were killed by the Israelis themselves. And of course, I don't care anymore. I've always tried to stay away from, even though I haven't really in a certain sense, I've always alluded to it, but I've always tried to stay away from blatantly, explicitly stating kind of false flags, because false flags are taboo. You're not allowed to talk about false flags. It's like unthinkable. They wouldn't do that kind of thing. But, when someone has a plan 30, 40, 50 years in the making, they've talked about it openly. Israeli politicians have talked about it over that period of time. Israeli historians, respected, eminent Israeli historians have explicitly said, there'll come a time whenever we have to deal definitively with the Palestinian problem. We'll have to basically get rid of them completely. The time is not right now. When this particular historian was talking about it in 2010, I think, he said, but a time will soon come when an opportunity will present itself and that we will be able to implement this long-term plan to basically kill or deport all of the Palestinians, basically get rid of our problem. They've said it over and over and over again, and then something like that comes along and then they go ahead and do it. Well, first of all, like I said, it's very obvious to anybody who's acquainted with that information, which is public domain, and anybody with any sense knows that has been the Israeli intention for a long time, to get rid of the Palestinians. And then when they start, then this opportunity comes along and they're able to start implementing this final solution plan that they've had for a very long time, to then just sit back and go, oh, I wonder how this is going to play out. I wonder what what they're actually going to do here. I wonder where this is going. Well, maybe if you just look at what they've said over the past 30 years, you'd be immediately aware of where this is going, and you can start trying to stop it from happening now, because you know where it's going. They're going to slaughter as many Palestinians as possible and deport them. It's going to be a genocide and ethnic cleansing. The thing they've been doing over the past 30 or 40 years at a slow rate, now they're going to ramp it up and get it done as fast as possible. But to sit there and scratch your head, like for people to sit there and scratch their head and politicians to pretend they don't know, for media pundits to pretend they don't know, is just ridiculous. But that's keeping it within the domain of reasonable, rational discourse. That can't be. It's unimpeachable. It's a solid argument. But it's equally reasonable, in my opinion, to go to the point then, given that context, to question whether or not Israel deliberately planned October 7th and allowed it to happen, or facilitated its happening, or did it themselves. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, some state like Israel, that's as paranoid and delusional as the state of Israel, and psychopathic as the state of Israel, makes it clear that they have this plan over a long period of time. To achieve this is their primary goal ultimately, then it's not unreasonable to suggest that they would create the conditions or create the context in which they get to implement that plan. Apparently only because, no, I don't want to believe that, or that's too horrible to contemplate, or Israel wouldn't do that, or people wouldn't do that, or what kind of person would do that? Well, I don't know. You haven't really lived in the real world if you can't go there, type thing. You haven't actually been paying attention to how politics works and how certain human beings.
You're a bit useless, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, you're not really. Yeah. I mean, you're not even sitting back. You don't have to be doing anything, but you're not even sitting back and observing objectively. You're not even being rational about what you're observing. If you're observing. If you're not observing, you're useless. If you're actually observing and then you don't draw those obvious conclusions, or you allow some emotional block where it's like, oh no, but it hurts me, it hurts my brain, or it hurts my heart, or it hurts something for me to even think that would be possible, that a false flag, like Israel or someone within the Israeli government would actually would kill their own people in order to achieve a long long-term plan or long-term goal. It's just, I don't want to believe that. So it's like, I just can't accept the fact that people with means, motive, and opportunity and power to do so would ever do something that would allow them to achieve what they really want to achieve. Okay, so you're basically saying, okay, I suppose you have to go to psychopathy and all that kind of stuff, but you're basically ruling out the idea that human beings take action to achieve goals that they want to achieve. That's literally what it is. If you remove the morality and all that kind of stuff, you're literally saying, and I suppose that's the problem, where you have to remove the morality aspect of it, and that there are some people who don't really have any moral compass at all. And that's maybe the main stumbling block, where people can't conceive of human beings who think in that way about the world and other people. And but I suppose that's the main thing to get over, because otherwise, once you get to that point, you can accept that there are people like that. Then it's pretty simple. They had a plan, long-term plan, dearly held plan to get rid of the Palestinians. They needed a justification for it, and they created it themselves. Well,
yeah. Okay, so that's in the realm of conspirators. So political actors. They could be in the military. They could be in Israeli Mossad, whatever. We've looked at polling among the, let's say, enabling populations of the West. Here's some recent polling from the protagonist population, namely Israelis themselves. What do they think of all this? Of where their society's at, what they should do next. So let's do what the critic tends to say. Oh, it's Netanyahu. It's the far right in government in Israel. If we just get rid of them, it'll be all right. A new poll of Israeli Jews conducted by Penn State University reveals overwhelming 82% support for ethnic cleansing of Gazans and solid majority support for ethnic cleansing of Israeli Arabs. So they're Palestinians who've accepted that they're now Israelis, just not Jewish. Nearly half, 47% of Israelis support killing all Gazans in cities captured by the IDF. This is tweeted by History Speaks. I'm not sure what their source was, but they've grabbed that from presumably the paper published by Penn State University.
So
65% of those surveyed answered that there is a current incarnation of Amalek, the biblical tribe that the old Israelites of old supposedly wiped out from the face of the earth. And remember, that's 60. Those people don't believe. They don't have. They're not like. They're not like Torah following Jews, but Amalek is still real to them.
So the 80, because they're nuts. So the 82% of Israeli Jews who support the ethnic cleansing of Gazans. Do you think it's possible that if you put them together you can create a politician?
Yeah.
From that kind of grassroots opinion.
Yeah.
You could create one or more or multiple politicians, and then therefore you have multiple politicians. Let's say majority. Let's take pure democracy, right? So 82% of Israeli Jews. That means let's extrapolate and go 82% of Israeli politicians support the ethnic cleansing of Gazans.
And are currently in government.
Yeah, the ones that are actually in power.
Yeah.
But it's probably more. It's probably like 100%, actually. 110% of Israeli politicians support the ethnic cleansing of Gazans. So, and it's just one example. This is as if this is new. Like, this attitude of Israeli Jews towards Palestinians is as old as the hills, basically. They've hated them and wanted to ethnically cleanse them and slaughter them all for a very long time. So, that's why I say, when Israel started on this mass murder spree after October 7th in earnest, the idea that members of Western governments, who obviously have been watching that whole thing because Israel is very important to them, and the media, the mainstream media, who are reporting on Gaza and Palestine and Israel for decades. The idea that they didn't know that this is where it was going is just not believable. So for them now at this late hour to suddenly, raise a few angry words or statements of
condemnation
towards Israel is
even Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's, in my opinion, it's too late. Obviously, Gaza is totally destroyed. There's no way even if Israel were to allow Gaza to go back, that they would really be able to.
They can't return. They've gone in too deep, as they say. How do they come back from that?
You'd have to get the Israelis completely out, the Israeli military completely out of Gaza. Somehow you're going to have to force the Israeli government to disengage completely and turn Gaza over to United Nations and have United Nations organizations come in and provide mass shelter and accommodation for the people in Gaza, and then and have them completely control all of the aid, and that would have to be ongoing. And then you'd have to have a massive influx of funding from different sources, international sources, to rebuild Gaza. Does anybody think Israel's going to sit back and let that happen, or will even?
No, only with no Palestinians in it. Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. There's no way that's going to happen, And usually what Israel does, if they feel like they're being forced by public opinion or whatever in that direction, and this is the question, is whether or not this anti-Semitic public opinion that's risen up over the past week or so, if it has any legs, if it's going to continue and get worse and put more and more pressure on Israel, if that were to happen, as opposed to just quieting down and things carrying on and Israel continuing to fulfill its genocidal agenda in Gaza, if it were to be put under more pressure, increasing pressure over the next period of time, usually what Israel does in response to that is to create a kind of diversion, to give these countries that are too focused on Israel, look, you're all too focused on what we're doing here. Don't you have something else to do? Don't you have somewhere else to look? You're paying too much attention to us. We don't like this attention. We'd like to just get on with our genocide in private, if you don't mind. I mean, it's really not cool that you're paying too much attention to us. So here's something else for you to look at. How about we start a war with Iran? Although that would be maybe. I wouldn't put it past them. I just don't know enough about the actual the implications. I mean, it hasn't happened to date. There's been that tit for tat bullshit last year, orchestrated. You shoot me, I shoot you, and then we all shake hands and go home. I don't know if it would be feasible or a good idea for this. I don't know how crazy the Israelis are in a certain sense. I don't know what their calculations are in terms of their ability to actually attack Iran and not get smacked seriously in return. So that may be off the table. That may just be a lot of kind of
hot air, rabble
rousing, and kind of like. There's a lot of people on the anti-Israel, let's say, or pro-Palestinian side who are willing Israel effectively to attack Iran, not because they want Iran to be attacked, but because they want Iran to respond and destroy Israel.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a realistic scenario. I would give a reasonable. I would give a fairly high probability of the fact that Israel could do serious damage to Israel. That it's Israel's vaunted missile defense system, it wouldn't be up to the task of, would be overwhelmed basically by Iranian missiles. But maybe the Israelis make some calculations, say, yeah, overwhelmed, but, and would suffer damage, but it wouldn't be that significant. And it would, because, talking about the two diplomats who are, two embassy staff workers, whatever, who were shot, if you want to just up the ante on that one, that provides some sympathy for Israel, right? And cries of anti-Semitism and look, we're under attack. Your trump card in that respect would be to have provoke a situation where Iran attacks you.
Where you're attacked.
Yeah. And then you try to draw the countries in, but you'd have to calculate it in such a way that you know that you're not going to be completely obliterated, right? You don't want to be wiped out, right? That's the one vein of sanity, let's say, that still runs through these psychos in the Israeli government, is that they don't want their country destroyed, their precious little country destroyed, but then there's miscalculations as well, they wouldn't be doing it on purpose,
and boom.
So it's pretty dire, the whole situation there, and I don't know. I know it's, I don't want to be too black and white about it. I know it's nuanced, but it's not so much nuance, it's all fucked up in a certain sense, because I allow for the fact that Trump is genuine in that he doesn't want to start wars. He doesn't like seeing killing and stuff. I mean, he talks too much about all the poor Ukrainian and Russian young men, young boys, whatever he calls them, 5,000 a week who are getting killed, and I want to stop this war, this needless, senseless war, blah, 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 blah. But he says all that while sending weapons to Israel so that it can slaughter
5,000 kids a week.
Palestinian.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
That's exaggeration, but something like that are dying.
It's something about it probably is
could well be dying
overall on average.
And bombing.
Well, on average, I think because I think the figures probably are something like 250 to 300,000, and 5
dead.
Yes, and 5,000 a week over a year is about 250,000. So maybe it's a bit less than 5,000 a week. It's maybe 3,000 a week. But anyway, so how can you believe Trump?
Yeah,
it's difficult. But at the same time, you can say, well, I don't believe him, because if he doesn't care, how can you care about Ukrainian and Russian soldiers who are dying in a war, and not give a shit about Palestinian women and children who are being slaughtered like fish in a barrel? Or what does that say about your morality? Is your morality genuine then? If you actually, but like I said, I don't want to be too black and white about it, and I allow for the fact that Trump does actually care and doesn't like to see war, doesn't like and doesn't, effectively doesn't support Israel in doing what it's doing, but that there are other considerations that make it impossible for him to do anything about it, including continuing to send weapons to Israel. So that's a big question for me, and I think it's a question for anybody who comes across this, who's been looking at this situation, Israel, Palestine, and the West, about the questions that remains really unanswered, and it hasn't been really satisfactorily explained, as the question of what is the nature of the control that Israel has over so many Western politicians, to the point that someone like Trump comes along, who apparently wants to be the peacemaker president and all this kind of stuff, doesn't want to start any wars, wants to stop wars, but facilitates mass murder in Gaza. What is the hold? Is it psychological?
Well, you have tidbits through history. You have dancing Israelis on 9/11. So there's never a briefing per se where a subsequent president like Trump has it explained to him, even just to the extent that they do have a body of evidence, and we have these 3 theories, sir, and here they are. I doubt, but he will be aware that happened. So there are a kind of it has a quasi mystifying effect, I suspect, on leaders all over the world, mostly in the West, that they know these things, like dancing Israelis on 9/11. It speaks to a knowledge or insight or capability that is so alarming that you don't even have to be briefed with the details. There was in the mid 2000, maybe 2010, there was a brief scandal. In other words, it was reported that DC streets in the core capital area were totally rigged with Israeli surveillance cameras, basically a parallel surveillance system.
Israeli spy rings.
For visual and audible network, and it was all piped to Israel, and it was reported as such, and that was it. We'll investigate, and that's the end of it. You'd think that would, like the Americans, this is the United States, they'd be up in arms, there'd be a diplomatic spat, but it's just, so you get these tidbits that speak to a power that is, like I say, quasi-mystical.
And
And
just not even mystical, but it's entrenched.
On the eve of 9/11,
systemic.
we have was it a CIA report or DOD? It was a US military report, and the description of the Mossad, something like wildcard, has the ability to attack us and make it look like it's the Palestinians. Cunning and deceitful to the max, or something. They had a very brief description, and they left it at that. In other words, don't fucking touch them. If you come across something that you suspect is them, just let us know and go home. Don't make a big deal out of it. And it's not even that simple, of course, because Mossad and CIA are bridged now. They have merged at some level, sometime in the 70s and 80s. So it's one entity. Jeffrey Epstein, was he Mossad or CIA? It kind of doesn't matter. He was obviously Jewish, so he's more likely to be working for the Israelis, but maybe he himself didn't even know what exactly is. So in the 1970s, Seymour Hersh wrote The Samson Option. It was quite a bombshell at the time, and it's kind of sustained the deep politics researcher for the last half century as to a theoretical basis for why everyone acts like Israel's got a gun to their head. More recently, people assume blackmail and kitty fiddling, because thanks in part to the Epstein scandal. But kitty fiddling, not all Western, not the whole political class of Westerners are pedos, and they've not all been stupid enough to be caught. And even if they are caught in something that's quasi-compromising, like an affair or something, an extramarital affair, they have enough conscience, if conscience alone was the thing to sway it, to say, I condemn Israel, I recognize Palestine. Because you do see some of them, there are current governments that do that and that suggest they're going that way. So that's clearly not just personal hold either. So Seymour Hersh wrote The Samson Option, and it was soundly researched, and the scenario he got was that Israel had acquired nukes in secret. Everyone knows that now, but at the time it was busted wide open kind of job. And that they are all pointed at Western capitals. In the event of a scenario where Israel feel it's as an existential crisis, and it's about to be quote unquote betrayed by the West, specifically the US, I imagine. We have the Samson Option. If we're going down, we'll take them with us. Thing is, though, like I said, it's sustained conspiracy lore for half a century. A lot's happened since then. I seriously doubt they rely on that. Let's continue with the scenario. I seriously doubt they still rely on that. Why? Because as the Houthis, never mind the Ruskies, have shown us, missile defense capability has advanced so much that wouldn't be particularly threatening anymore. You could counter that. So now you've got to scale it up. What would such a mindset, put yourself in Mossad head for a second, what would they do next? Well, how about if they pre-plant the nukes directly in the Western capitals? Okay, maybe that's extreme, but something like that. What if they jerry-rigged your systems? What if they cooperated with you on that key satellite launch back in 2008, and it was really important for Pentagon surveillance, and it was integrated with your civilian satellite tech? So it's both your cell network for your mobile phones for civilians in the United States, and it's critical for the DoD. And the Israelis have a back door because you cooperated at the time. Little did you know, it's also got a fucking kill switch in it. So what if the system is cyber jerry-rigged? Stuff like that.
But all that information would have to be made explicit to each particular president or each particular politician.
They get whiffs of it. I don't think it's ever, they're never going to be briefed, because if you're briefed, it's no longer a secret and it doesn't work.
But how do you stop someone if Trump?
You can't. It's jerry-rigged. The whole system.
No, but what if Trump turns around and says, "Look, we need to do something with Israel. They need to tell them to stop here."
Something happens.
Trump wants to do that, and
there's a message. Something falls out of the sky, and then it's interpreted to him, sir.
But Trump's just going to take. I mean, he's going to want to know. Like, he's the kind of person who'd want to know. He'd want to know the details. Like, he's not the kind of person who goes.
Well, did he want to know all the details about the drones, the mystery drones, compromising U.S. airspace?
No, but that
big time over the winter,
right? But apparently, yeah, that stuff that wasn't directly. Didn't directly impact something he wanted to do. For example, like, I mean, when he wants to do something and he's told no, he's not going to go, okay, because the Jews, because the Jews. You know what I mean? You'd think someone like him would want to have a specific, be given a good enough reason why he can't do what he wants to do. There may be certain things he wants to know about, like the drones or whatever, but then it doesn't necessarily impact his. He didn't. You know what I mean? It doesn't directly impact his policies or what he wants to achieve or whatever. Blah blah blah. So I don't know. It's just the question. I don't know how that works, and like I said, I don't know if it's of that nature where obviously there is a lot of blackmail going on. Has been blackmail going, Israeli spy rings and all that kind of stuff for a very long time. As we know, every single politician, with the exception of one or two in Congress and probably the Senate, all have their AIPAC mentor who follows them around and tells them what to do and all that kind of stuff, and they accept it. I don't know. I tend to lean more and more to kind of some kind of mind programming or something like that, where everybody seems to have been mind programmed by Israel.
Yeah. Well, there you can make a rational case just on that alone. You don't have to go to anything quasi weird or they've got the goods on that specific person. What do you mean they've got the good on 99% except Thomas Massey? Mm-hmm. that seems a bit extreme. Mm-hmm. Mind programming could do it too. So pre 9/11, Israel doing this, they couldn't. You would have had the Clinton administration actually stopping the weapons. Mm-hmm. Post 9/11, post war on terror, you had to lead them to the point where the opposition leaders, never mind the British opposition leader this week, was on defending the genocide in Gaza. Oh, we can't call it that. Hamas, It took some work to get to this place, and that's psychological for sure. That's layers and layers of programming and time.
Basically,
so
Muslim terrorists.
Because terrorism, and then it works to some extent. Netanyahu just gets on TV, speaks in English. It's not really for the Israeli audience; it's for the international audience. Remember, terrorists, Muslims, terrorists, Muslim terrorists, and you're in the ballpark of okay, bye.
Doesn't matter.
Of course, yeah.
These people are terrorists,
and it's a complete package. So this thing I'm referring to, maybe we should listen to it. I don't know. She might drive you nuts.
Yeah, go ahead.
The British opposition leader, it's a black woman. She's now the leader of the Tory party. Cadi Badenoch. She's got, I think, she's some Nigerian name or something. Okay, so she's on a BBC flagship political news show, and she's getting grilled in a good BBC fashion. Well, these are pretty extreme words now you use. She drops something in it that you'll recognize, but I bet the audience didn't. We'll have a listen. It's So you're going to hear the usual word salad, but as you listen to this, folks, see if you can spot it.
Earlier this week, the Prime Minister joined with Mr. Macron and Mr. Carney in criticising Israel. Mr. Netanyahu responded by accusing him of supporting murderers, rapists, and baby killers. Was the Israeli leader right to say that?
Well, I think the first thing to say on this issue is that if Hamas is praising your actions, you've probably done something wrong. Hamas is a terrorist group that is, making the lives of the people in Gaza, the Palestinians in Gaza.
That's what Mr. Netanyahu
horrible.
said.
And
Are you agreeing with his language?
So what I'm saying is that Israel is fighting a war where they want to get 58 hostages who have not been returned. That is what all of this is about. And they have said there won't be a ceasefire until they get their people back. What we need to make sure is that we're on the side that is going to eradicate Hamas. We need that to happen if we're ever going to get a two-state solution and end this war.
But does that mean that you, A, support the current Israeli action and that actually you think that Mr. Netanyahu's language on this is justified?
I'm not here to police the language of the Prime Minister
I'm not
of
asking
Israel.
you to police it. I'm asking...
What he has said, he sees
people need to know where you stand.
Yeah, but I've been very clear where I stand. Hamas is a terrorist group. They are not our friends.
I'm talking about what
Trevor,
you think about the Israelis'
Yes, but it's all related. Who funds Hamas? Iran. An enemy of this country. An enemy of this country. Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the UK, just like Ukraine is on behalf of the Western Europe against Russia. We have to get serious. We have to get serious. There was a terrorist plot in London against the Israeli embassy. We saw 2 Jewish members of the Israeli embassy in DC killed. Whose side are we on? We need to make sure that the hostages are returned. No one wants to see a war in Gaza. Palestinians are suffering. Netanyahu is complaining that he thinks our leaders are carrying out the wrong action. He has every right to say that. What I want to see is Keir Starmer making sure that he is on the right side of British national interest. That cannot be on the side of Hamas.
I'm asking you about the Israeli language and Israeli action. Are you actually equating the Israeli action in Gaza with Ukrainians?
So Israel is fighting a war. Israel is fighting a war. It is not for me to police exactly how they are doing that. It is not a genocide, as people are saying. There are a lot of things which we can criticize Israel on, which I have done in terms of how they may carry out some of these actions. But the bottom line is they are fighting a terrorist group that is trying to destroy that country. They want to get their hostages back. And if Hamas is praising the actions of Macron and Starmer, something is not right.
This morning,
it
doesn't sound like you're criticizing anything that the Israelis do.
That's not true. I have criticized things before, but right now there are 58 hostages. There are 58 hostages who have not been returned home. If you sat where I sat and spoke to the mothers of those hostages, like I did, who were talking just a year ago, 2 years ago, about posters of their children being ripped down while they hadn't come home, I think that we need to recognize this is a very difficult situation, but I do not want to be in a position where a terrorist group is praising my actions, and that is where Keir Starmer has found himself. I do not think that we should be doing anything that is not in the national interest of this country. An Iran-backed terrorist organisation is not one that we should be getting praise from.
Okay, did you spot it?
Oh, yeah. But, I mean...
Israel
it's not really...
is fighting a proxy war against Iran.
So you mean
for us?
Yeah. Well,
it's you get an insight into how she's being informed, or how she simply sees it. Maybe it's organic to her.
She's been told that by Israeli lobbyists.
Most of those are Israeli talking points. The hostages thing is bullshit. It's Israel that's blocking the return of hostages and so on. And most of those little things she did were just simply their talking points. But the big picture analysis. That's what she's born probably soon, close to 9/11 herself. She's reared on that geopolitical interpretation of the whole earth. At the West, Israel is this goes back to what RFK Jr. was saying. If we didn't have an Israel as a beachhead in the Middle East, we'd have to fucking create one. We need it. It's like, it's an outpost there for us. British see that way too.
Yeah,
and they just like it to not be, can you just be a little less genocidal? But we totally value, we actually proactively value what you're doing. You're doing us, the West, a service. That's how they see the world.
But that's the way that's what Israel has been. That's not new. Like that's what Israel was created for.
It's not often you hear them say, though, that Israel is fighting a proxy war.
Yeah, well, she's saying that now because she was probably given that as a talking point in order to make it relevant to her. You know what I mean? Like, let me explain that. You know, she's told by her Israeli mentors, Israeli lobbyist mentors, that, you know, let me make this relevant for you. Like, you know, you may think of this as just I mean, the Israelis have been saying this for for a long time as well. It's like, we're doing this for the West.
We're the only democracy in the Middle East.
And we're protecting democracy, and we're protecting the West from these Muslim hordes, blah, 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 blah. So that's, it's kind of global or whatever. And, but she's been told that or been updated on that. And she's just a mouthpiece. Like, I mean, she literally at the start there presented as her own words, the same words that Netanyahu said about how if you find yourself, being thanked by a terrorist organization, then you're on the wrong side of history. That's literally what. That's literally what
he had said earlier in the week
to Stormer and the others. Yeah. And she just repeated that without saying that that's what he said. So she literally just copied what he said and pretended it was her own words. So what does that tell you about her? Like, but yeah,
Well, I've thought before now that Israel's, whether it was strategically intended, I think it was even expressly outlined in the that 1996 document. Not the Rebuilding America's Defenses. That's the American PNAC side. The other one, the one that Netanyahu actually personally wrote something for. Anyway, it's stressed. There's a whole Wikipedia page just on this one. It's stressed that what we need to do, we being, it wasn't clear, was we Israel or was we neocons in DC, whatever.
Same thing.
They merge. What we need to do is get Westerners to understand that our values are their values. Mm-hmm. It's one and the same. And it reminded me of that esoteric thing from Castaneda about the predator. You don't understand. Castaneda is told by Don Juan, they pulled a stupendous maneuver. They gave us their mind. Mm-hmm. Their thoughts became our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then, so she does it so well. She hasn't just been briefed and she's remembered it. Her mind is like actually Israeli. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But she's also got obviously her history is African and all that kind of stuff, and she'd be one of those, she's a conservative, so she's a self-hating lefty, basically, who's joined the Conservative Party and has embraced all conservative values, and she eschews any, because she was shamed as a child or something, had some bad experience as a child because she was from African. She was like had racist abuse of some description, whatever, and she came to hate herself because of that. And then she swore that she would become more conservative, more English than the English, and she would hate all those others that she was identified with as she was as a child and still is, let's say, in the UK. But she then. It's kind of like a Reformed Catholic or someone who's given.
I thought you were going to say a house Negro.
No, well, yeah, a reformed smoker. The people who give up things
and then become ardent proselytes.
They're the ones that hate anybody else who does that most. It's a very basic human psychological feature, let's say, and she's displaying it. I think right there.
Maybe Douglas
Murray, exactly. He's the same. He's a queer, and he can't handle the
conservative figurehead.
He wants to be as straight, straighter than the straightest person, even though he's going to be the straightest queer on the entire planet, right? The most conservative, Bible thumping, holier than thou, puritanical queer in the entire world, right? He's going to be like the complete antithesis of all those people that made him
with
feel
the purple hair.
Yeah, he's a complete antithesis of all of the flamey gay people, flamer gays, those people that made him feel ashamed of himself as a child when he came out of the closet. Whenever he knew he was homosexual, and he felt ashamed because of that. And those people that because they're the ones, it's the extremists, right? The most obvious examples of, say, for example, homosexuality, or the ones who touted the loudest that their difference, let's say, they're the ones who stand out and come in for the most abuse, right? So like she's someone who's like, she'd be very, very anti-diversity, anti-Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff, right? It's a very difficult position to put yourself in. It's ridiculous, like, for people like that to go there, but then again, most of them are idiots. So, proxy war, for sure. Kind of. It's always been that way. The Middle East, Israel was stuck in the middle of the Middle East because, the West wanted the oil and wanted an outpost for the oil and resources, and to keep those restive provinces and restive countries down so that they didn't unify and take back their own resources. We need some way that we need to have a policeman in the Middle East.
It's been remarkably successful.
It has, yeah.
I was calculating there are about 120 million Arabs living very close by to Gaza. I mean, what happened to pan-Arab anything,
That was nixed in the 60s
and
and 70s.
It's so controlled.
He shot Nasser. Israeli shot Nasser.
I'm wishfully thinking, but I'm hoping they just pour over the border and just end it. If anyone's going to do it, it's clearly your kin, your closest kin in the immediate. It's a tiny area. I mean, there's a lot of them.
I think that would only happen if you had some kind of collapse. I think the policy of neutering Arab nationalism
or pan-Arab unity,
in the Middle East is the process of doing that. In the 60s and 70s, there was a concerted campaign by the West in league with the Israelis to take out or destroy any notions of pan-Arabism or pan-Arab nationalism at the time, and then the process thereafter of of bringing people up out of poverty and increasing wages and lifestyle and comforts and all that, creature comforts and all that kind of stuff is very effective as well at making people self-satisfied and no longer interested in
causes
and stuff, because they're distracted by their iPhones and distracted by their computers and distracted by all sorts of other technological shit, and there's no
spirit,
discomfort, let's say.
Spirit of
no adversity. There's no adversity.
And in the places where it does show, still, Yemen.
Yeah,
that's because they've had extreme adversity. Recently.
Absolutely. So it would only be in the case that there's 120 million Arabs will only maybe be in a position to do something with Israel definitively if things got a lot worse for them economically, or in terms of their lifestyle or their standard of living. So make them self-satisfied, content, complacent, and therefore Israel will be fine, But what she's saying is true. But again, it's just it's something she doesn't understand, and there's no moral question around it, right? RFK Jr., as much as you might like him or think well of him, he obviously is able to put his morality aside and say, look, at the end of the day, people die in wars, and the strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. Tough shit. That's the way it goes. But the bottom line is that Israel is our unsinkable aircraft carrier, our land-based aircraft carrier in the Middle East, and we need it because otherwise Russia, China, Iran, etc. would take over and we'd be kicked out, and that would be the end of America. And the West, the Brits obviously think the same and have felt the same, because they're saying, look, we set this up this way 100 years ago in order to ensure our prosperity and our hegemony in the world. It's now getting to the point where the barbarians, the Russians, the Chinese, and etc., barbarians are at the door, which I think someone actually said this week. Some European politician in the EU Parliament, I think, actually used that phrase, the Russian barbarians are at the door. Which is interesting, because that's kind of, at least in the narrativized version of the fall of Rome and all that kind of stuff, it was barbarians who were at the door that caused the collapse of Rome, and he's equating now. So he didn't use it in that context, but if you know your history, or if you're enough of your history to know that's what happened during the fall of Rome. He's basically saying, look, we're Rome we're in the final days of Rome here, and the barbarians are at the door. It's like, well, how did that go last time?
That's where the phrase comes from.
And we have to stop it happening again, right? So they set it up 100 years ago this way. Israel was their outpost that was going to contain maintain their influence and control in the Middle East, but Israel was going to extract payment, serious payment for that service that they offered. You can understand how they would, right? And Israel needed this messianic aspect to its belief in the creation of the state of Israel needed to be founded on that messianic message
to draw in as many Jews as possible.
Well, and to make it to draw them in, and also to make it enduring. To make it durable. To make
have an ideology.
To make it make it sustainable. That country's sustainable, because you're talking here about 100 years, really, since it was first thought of. The Balfour Declaration and all that kind of stuff. So it had to last for 100 years. How are you going to make a country that's just been transplanted, a new country that was made up basically and transplanted in the Middle East around, tens of millions of Arabs? How are you going to make sure that lasts 100 years and doesn't get absorbed or diluted or doesn't become friends or doesn't, you know what I mean? While you basically set it in stark opposition to the people that you're putting it in amongst, that you're creating the state amongst. It's like there's an area of the world there that's full of dogs. Let's set up a cat nation right in the middle. They're not going to get on, right? And they're going to stay loyal to us because they're going to be always under threat. And there's so many. The whole Israeli project is so fucked up, and the psychology behind the state of Israel, it's all based on a lie, basically, which is why it's so fucked up. Like the whole idea of anti-Semitism and stuff. There's so much irrationality and stupidity behind it, and like kind of perverse, kind of psychological or cliched psychological tropes, almost, that Israel is actually living out.
Yeah. If I don't steal it, someone else
that
will.
Kind of thing, and the self-fulfilling prophecy writ large is just ridiculous. Everybody's self-fulfilling prophecy is something that everybody knows about, right? It's like, you go around, believing something hard enough and acting out that belief that you're going to get the results of it, right? I mean, you think that everybody hates you
in your
and
head,
you go around going, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and throwing stones at people and spitting on people in the street.
Yeah.
And then eventually they turn on you and kick the shit out of you and you go, see, I told you all along they hated me. I mean, that's literally what Israel is doing. And it's doing it. Like, everybody knows that some version of that scenario, of that basic, human psychological faux pas that has been around since the dawn of human civilization. And everybody knows it's a bad idea. And everybody be able to point it out when they saw it. Here we have a nation, Israel, that's playing it out with, and in doing so causing a lot of suffering for innocent people and death for innocent people. And we all have to sit here and watch it play out. Something that everybody knows,
so obvious,
as part of their DNA in a certain sense, that that's stupid. You shouldn't do that.
Which is why the vast majority of people don't go through this.
Right.
Because nobody does it. They know.
Because it's stupid. Everybody knows.
That's like, really stupid. Yeah.
Don't do that. That's stupid. Like, everybody knows that's stupid. It's like, but it goes. I mean, it's kind of like, there's nuanced versions of that. I mean, with
like Ukraine. Ukraine is a watered down version of.
Yeah, they're
convinced that they can go up against Russia and win.
Yeah. But the Israelis, it's like there's many different aspects to it, and like with the whole anti-Semitism, it's a complete lack of insight, I suppose, like a zero insight into themselves, because that's what I'm talking about here. That kind of that whole self-fulfilling prophecy aspect of that's well known to vast majority of humans just instinctively. The Israelis apparently don't know that. They can't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, to know that and to be aware of that and be able to spot it in other people when it's happening very easily takes base level insight, base level human insight. The Israelis don't have that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's happening on a collective level, but you could argue that it's actually more
genetic,
more obvious, because it's happening on a larger collective level, or should be more obvious. But the Israelis have this thing, the anti-Semitism thing, which is kind of weird, because they complain about anti-Semitism. What is anti-Semitism? Well, it's the fact that people don't like us. Basically, as you're saying, people don't like the Jews. That's what anti-Semitism. It's like, remove anti-Semitism and say, what's your problem? What are you complaining about today? As a Jew, I'm complaining about anti-Semitism in the world. And what do you mean by anti-Semitism? Well, I mean that people don't like Jews. Okay, but more specifically, you mean that they don't like you, right? Yeah, it kind of hurts, basically, because I feel like people don't like me. It's kind of like being a kid. It's kind of like being like a kid in the schoolyard and nobody in the class liking you. So that's the level we're at. That's what they mean when they talk about anti-Semitism. But yet, so that's what they're expressing. No more anti-Semitism. Stop the anti-Semitism, because it's making me as an individual Jew and us Jews collectively feel like we're outsiders. Feel like you're shunning us. We feel like the shunned kid in the classroom.
Yeah,
it's not nice. That's why we get angry and we don't like it. Okay, so do you think there's anything in your Jewish or Israeli Jewish cultural or religious beliefs that might play into that? What about the whole a people apart? The wandering Jew, the people that shall walk alone. We're different. We're special.
We're better than.
Let's date.
We're supremacists.
Right. Yeah. So on the one hand, you complain about people treating you as different and separate and kind of shunning you from time to time, but at the same time, you actually embrace that and live that out and actually extol that as a virtue of your identity, or a part of your identity, and therefore a virtue. So it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm like, it's like so idiotic. It's base level idiocy. It's like retardedness that I don't even engage with.
It was typically Jews who invented psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
well, they still haven't come to terms with it.
Well,
they still haven't got
very often the wrong psychoanalysis,
right?
In a sense, like fucked up psychoanalysis, which isn't surprising either. Which, in fact, is consistent with what I'm talking about. The fact that, what do you call him? Freud got some of the very basics completely wrong. It's not surprising, given that he was a Jew.
And he was living at the same time as Theodor Herzl in Vienna.
So the whole thing's just so stupid, and I wouldn't even call it tragic, even though it's tragic for the victims of these people, because the worst aspect about it is that for somehow this bunch of deluded, crazy, fucked up, psychologically fucked up people have a lot of power and influence and weapons. That's the unfortunate, the tragic aspect of it is that part of it. But it's in terms of what's actually happening, it's not tragic. It's fucking idiotic. It's ridiculous. It's just so stupid. I can't believe it. Like an example I just gave. Why would I even talk to anybody who, more or less, comes to me complaining about the fact that people in their community don't like them, while at the same time admitting that they go around
doing things
that make them unlikable in their community? I mean, it's like, dude, you've just answered your own question.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to tell you. Go away and sort it out, or suffer the consequences. But it's not rocket science. You're acting like an asshole. You're claiming you make a big noise about being different from everybody else in your community, and then complain that they don't treat you as part of the community. All right, your session's over. Go. Give me the €100 and go. That's it. I'm not talking to you anymore. There's literally nothing more to say to you people,
Yeah. Yeah. Well done. That's a good psychoanalysis.
Yeah, and
that's the end of it. It's
not even. I struggle to even call it psychoanalysis. I don't know what it is. It's like 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
And that's but it's so frustrating that all this shit is happening as a result of it, as a result of something so idiotic and so stupid. And that you have Western governments and media, grappling with it and hand-wringing over it, saying,
gymnastics.
How do we solve this? What's actually happening? And that's why I go, they're not that stupid. They're lying. They don't care.
Okay.
They're bullshitting. They can't actually believe that there's a very nuanced, complex situation here. No,
that we can't
it's
see.
Not. It's very simple. You set the state of Israel up 100 years ago in order to protect the natural resources that you desperately needed to be to maintain global hegemony. 100 years ago, you set that up. You set up the state of Israel to protect those resources for you. And now you've caught a tiger by the tail in a certain sense, because those people have set up, empowered a bunch of crazy people.
Yeah.
And now they're within your system, and they're not letting go. And they've infected you.
In fact, they implicitly threaten to destroy you if you so much as They'll tell them to maybe try and be nice to the other children in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Fuck you, I'll kill you.
Yeah. It's kind of like...
And I'll use your satellites to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're screwed.
I'm tasking you with protecting the thing that provides me with all of my power. I better hope that you're not pathological, that you're not some fucked up person, because I'm basically giving you access.
The keys to the kingdom.
Exactly. And then you're going to use them against me. So, I'm done with the Jews. I was done a long time with the Jews. Done a long time ago. I just have to suffer them at this point until something happens.
In that other war, proxy war to save the West, God save the regime, that the British opposition leader mentioned, Ukraine, no big movement yet. Since we had the show, Trump and Putin had their call on Monday. It's very vague as to how it went, but they both said good things about it, so I suppose it's just taking over. Putin said, what did he say? Constructive. The conversation was highly constructive and I assess it positively, but we still need a roadmap, etc., etc. The one concrete thing that has emerged is they have done, Ukraine and Russia directly, they have done their largest prisoner swap to date, 1,000 for 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
But the images of the prisoners returning to Russia in the buses, a bunch of them are wearing military uniforms, but a bunch of them are babushkas.
Mm-hmm.
So it is true, in fact, that the Yukis with Western commandos took civilians hostage. That's not prisoner of war, like I said last week. Prisoner of war is military capture.
Yeah.
The shitheads. But it shows you how, like...
So Ukraine takes hostages and it's fine. Nobody says a word about it.
Yeah.
Civilian hostages.
Yeah.
Hamas takes civilian hostages and they all have to be wiped out.
Yeah. Yeah. Putin did reiterate that Moscow won't settle for anything less than, quote, addressing the root causes of the conflict, which is
said over and over again, repeatedly. And apparently the Western media can't get that into their heads.
There's been some movement. Russian troops have poured separately. Putin gave a statement on TV about creating a buffer zone to protect the 3 regions that border the rest of eastern Ukraine that they're not currently in. Well, since then they've moved in. It's not a big hour movement, but there are Russian forces now inside Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Not en masse. I don't think they're going to try and swoop for Sumy and Kharkiv cities, but could be slow, could take months, but I think they will. Looks like they want to. If you follow that through, his literal word, they'll create a band that existed when the war began that will extend all the way from northern Ukraine down to the Donbass. And there will be no more Kursk invasion attempts. In the meantime, Ukraine is peppering Russia with drones up the wazoo. I think something like 1,000 in the last week were shot down, the Russians say. The figures sound bonkers. And you wonder, are the Russians exaggerating that a bit? But Putin in between his statements, he personally visited Kursk. That's the first time since it was more or less liberated. There's footage of him visiting a nuclear plant there or something like that. Well, a story has emerged that on his way out, one of those drone swarms got wind of his location and tried to... I can imagine if they found out, they would try to knock out his chopper or whatever he was flying in. Yeah. Apparently, they had to deal with it in real time.
RT had a report on it. Is it here? Putin's helicopter was caught in Ukrainian drone swarm. Kyiv launched an unprecedented UAV attack on the Kursk region during the president's visit, a Russian officer has said. It was caught in the epicenter of a massive Ukrainian drone attack while the president was visiting Kursk region earlier this week. Commander of the Air Defense Division revealed. He went to Kursk on Tuesday. During his trip, the president met with blah, 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 an interview with Channel 1, blah, blah, blah. military guy revealed that Putin's helicopter had found itself in the epicenter of an operation to repel a massive drone attack by enemy in Kursk region. So what's dangerous there is obviously because the drones are all relatively slow moving. The Ukrainian drones, they're all kind of light aircraft, retooled light aircraft, or just standard drones. Small, big, but standard off the shelf kind of quadcopters. So his jet that he was flying in wouldn't have been in danger from those drones. The danger is that the air defenses shooting down those drones would mistake. So they had to be very careful not to shoot down Putin's jet in a friendly fire incident.
I think they probably calculated that before. I think if there'd been a similar scenario 3 years ago, it would have been risky. But I think Putin,
or his helicopter, he was in a helicopter, sorry.
Chopper, which is slower. Yeah. I think that is a marker for how much they developed. So their stats about shooting down 1,000 drones in a week, this story gives weight to it because they're so confident that they can send him in and ID him correctly and shoot everything coming in the vicinity and not mistake him. That's some serious coordination and development in their capability. So the UKs are just up in the ante. Now, they're up in the ante, but it's like literally the flea climbing up an elephant's backside. It doesn't do anything. But Russia now and then stores up some of that hurt because a couple of people were killed. There were some actual hits of civilians in those neighboring regions, and they smacked Ukraine with airstrikes big time. Some saying the biggest wave yet 2 nights ago. Ukrainians it's illegal to upload footage of stuff happening, but still people have done it. And I don't know what the effect is.
Interesting thing about
they hit power stations, mostly military sites. They did the Russian MOD published footage of one of the strikes hitting a Patriot system. I mean, the whole battery, like all the gear that comes with it, all the way over across, sort of not Kyiv, but Dnipropetrovsk, the central region, and they published drone footage of the strike. One of those systems, excluding the missiles, cost $1 billion, $1.09 billion.
Of what? What's
the Patriot? The Patriot system.
No,
I think it is
not $1 billion, is it? One missile costs $1 billion?
No. The
whole system.
The whole system.
Yeah, that's about right, yeah. But that's
$1 billion.
That's at American prices. It could probably be made by China for about 100.
Oh, yeah. 100. I doubt the Russians are doing all their stuff on the cheap. That's it. That's part of the war, isn't it?
But everything that America makes in America, which is
costs a lot.
Yeah. Is ridiculous. I mean, there's massive gouging, obviously. They have to keep everybody all the employees in the companies in the conditions that they're used to. The lifestyle they're used to. So that's why those. But yeah, it obviously doesn't. That the basics of it don't cost one. Like I said, I'm sure Russia or China could probably have probably produced a similar system for a fraction of the cost.
Meanwhile, the UKs, I'm assuming, or everyone's assuming it's the UKs, you might have other ideas about it. Someone assassinated in broad daylight in Madrid last week, right after he dropped off his kids at the American school there. A former senior advisor, his name was Andrei Portnov, a former Yanukovych aide. The byline here says rumored to possess sensitive information on Zelensky. That's maybe RT impugning a motive for why he was whacked. The point is that he was whacked. That's his mark there. So yeah, he's another rich Ukrainian, but he's not a rich kind of. Well, I was going to say he's not pro-West, but he's driving a big Merc and he's dropping his kids off at the American school. So yeah, he's a Yanukovych aide, which means ideologically he falls on the opposite side of the pro-war party in Ukraine, but still he's integrated in the West. It's not like he fled to Moscow. his kids go to the American school. He's more or less signaling, I accept. I am pro-West now, or something like that. Anyway, maybe he's still. I don't know what he was doing in the meantime. Maybe he was still trying to mediate.
Well,
between Russia.
The thing that stands out about him is that he, after rearmament in Ukraine, after Yanukovych was ousted, and for a period of time after that, he was involved in investigating and potentially prosecuting people involved in the Maidan, quote-unquote, revolution. So it appears that he probably had information about what actually happened on Maidan in 2014, and that led to the overthrow of Yanukovych, and who was doing the shooting, who was killing the protesters,
right?
What Victoria Nuland and co really meant when they were picking the new government and saying "fuck the EU" and stuff like that. So he had inside information that he was attempting to use as leverage, and someone decided he wasn't going to get to use it as leverage. So
that's a photo of him there after being assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gangland style. It's
interesting thing about the
very Ukrainian mafia-like.
The interesting thing about the prisoner swap is that there's some stats or some estimations of how many. I mean, that the 1,000 prisoners that were released by Ukraine probably leaves about estimated 300 soldiers, POWs, 300 Russian POWs in Ukrainian prisons or whatever, in Ukraine's possession. But the numbers, and while Russia gave an equal amount of about 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners, Russia still has about another 9,000. So you're talking about, before this prisoner swap, you had a ratio of 10,000 Ukrainian POWs in Russia to about 1,300 Russian POWs in Ukraine. And if you extrapolate that out, which is a reasonable thing to extrapolate, and it's interesting because it actually jives or fits with previous estimations of KIA and injured, etc., over the course of the conflict. It's been pretty consistent of about somewhere between 7, 8, 9 to 1. So the previous estimates over the past few years on an ongoing basis have always been within that ballpark figure of 7, 8, 9 to 1. And here you have about an 8 or 9 to 1 ratio of prisoners, which would seem to make sense. I mean, it's not directly comparable, but in terms of the effectiveness of one military over the other, in terms of prisoners taken and enemy soldiers killed.
It's the only thing that fits. It explains the morale. If you compare morale in Russia to Ukraine.
At this point, I think you're talking about somewhere in the region of, again, 8, 9 to 1. You could put it in the ballpark of 1 million Ukrainians.
Casualties total, or just killed?
Killed or injured, like out of the action, basically out of operation. Killed or injured to Russian about 100,000.
Yeah,
I think Trump said that a few weeks ago. He made in a statement about Ukraine, one of his off the cuff comments. He said something along the lines of, he didn't say those numbers, but he said the numbers of, because he keeps on going on about the 5,000 being killed every week and all this kind of stuff. He says, and the total numbers, he said, are, you're going to be very surprised if they ever come out.
Yeah.
Because they've been underplaying it all along, which is part of the propaganda all along.
Because they've been lying about it.
Of course.
They've literally claimed it's 10 to 1 in the reverse.
Yeah, of course. You not only lie about it, but you reverse it.
You just flip it around.
Yeah.
And it's total horseshit. I'm seeing more and more videos from Ukraine where people are resisting the abduction of young men off the streets, fighting back. And a couple of them have been shot
Yeah.
They pull up in the vans and there are people armed. They shoot them. They don't give a fuck anymore. Well, they're starting to not. I hope they do.
Kind of defeats the purpose, no, of trying to get people to go to the front line if you just shoot them in the street in Kyiv, like.
Well, no, they're not. I'm saying that the guys, the big burly guys coming out, they're being
shot at. Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing is a scandal, and again, it's an example of just how much they were able to cover the whole thing up like that. I mean, what country, goes about drafting in that manner? It's one thing to institute a draft and force, conscript men into your military. It's another one to, and that's you're going back to 17th, 18th century tactics of getting, guys in pubs drunk, recruiter go in plain clothes and buy some drinks for a bunch of guys in a bar and then get them half drunk and then whack them over the head and carry them out in a stretcher, and when they wake up the next morning they're 10 miles off sea on a boat.
Yeah, what was the term they used for that?
Going to war. Huh?
It was a term they used for that.
Yeah. Can't remember.
There's a British Navy thing.
Yeah.
Something like railroading or
press ganging.
That's it. They've been press gang. Ukraine literally press. I'm not even fucking Israel does that. Like they have more. As fucked up as they are, they have self-respect for their IDF. Everyone has to join the IDF, but realistically, you don't have to get out there and join.
And on that point, actually,
battalion.
Surprise, but not that it's a surprise. The guy, the embassy worker who was shot in DC, the guy he served in the IDF. So
he's odd. He wasn't even Jewish or Israeli. Turns out he's German.
He lived in Israel. He's a German Jew, and he went and served time. He did the whole kibbutzy thing,
I think you'll find it was most peculiar. He's not Jewish. He was a Christian messianic.
Right, the two of them were, but
she might have been Jewish, but I believe something like that. Yeah, he's an Israeli citizen, but there was something about how he became one that stood out. It's not like he was accepted as a returning Jew making Aliyah.
No, but he, he's Yaron Lashinsky.
Okay.
He was a researcher in the political department at the Israeli embassy, and his girlfriend or fiance organized U.S. missions to Israel.
Okay.
The young man purchased a ring this week with the mention of proposing next week in Jerusalem. Born in Nuremberg, Germany, a Christian and a true lover of Israel, who chose to dedicate his life to the state of Israel and the Zionist cause. The son of a Jewish father and a Christian evangelist mother.
Okay.
So technically he's not a Jew because his mother wasn't a Jew. But,
right.
He wouldn't have been recognized as a proper Jew by the Israelis, right? By the Israeli Jews, because only his father was a Jew. Anyway, he was in the ADF and all that, and loved Israel.
A poster boy, nonetheless.
Yeah.
You remember last week's Ukrainian arsonist attacks in London on Starmer's personal property? Since then, 2 more Ukrainians in their 20s have been arrested.
Mm-hmm.
They're also aspiring male models, and they appear to all know each other. Very little follow-up with any meat in it. I mean, the tabloids are having a field day kind of with rumor and innuendo, but on actual substance, well, the Financial Times did something on it. Financial Times always behind a paywall for us, but Kit Klauenberg broke it down.
Possible Russian involvement,
Yeah.
For sure.
They're insinuating that, but he said the substance of the article had nothing on it. It was just some.
Of course. That's so impossible Russian involvement just to distract.
Yeah.
I mean, that's damage control basically right there. Every single time. Just blame the Russians, right?
Scroll down, we'll have a quick look at the thread. Police say the Ukrainian trio conspired with others unknown. Currently unexplained. Next one. None of the suspects exhibited any ideological affinity with Russia, with one even posting celebratory images of Ukrainian soldiers. Apparently. Who were they conspiring with, indeed? Government official cautioned many different versions of events are under investigation. Nothing's been ruled out. But of course, the point of the article is to insinuate it's Russia. But still, if anyone did actually read it, they go, hang on, this is totally mysterious. Yeah.
As the Yuki Jews did it. The Ukrainian/Jews, I mean, and I'm calling them Ukrainian Jews because this is the same tactic. I mean, it's not Israel doesn't have monopoly on this kind of thing. This is standard spycraft.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainians are involved in it, and the Ukrainians probably wanted to put pressure, Ukrainian SPU, whatever, the intel people wanted to put pressure on Stormer. So long before now, before they even felt they needed to put pressure, they wanted to be able to put pressure on him in case something happened. And they probably have done this with several other people, or as many as they can. They found out that Stormer's as gay as Christmas and likes you know, kind of teenage boys to frolic with. So they provided him some through a network of Ukrainians, like go on, you know, just escort some. There's lots of them, of every nationality. So in London, especially, a hive of scum and
villainy,
where you can find whatever you want, basically. So you get Ukrainian rent boys to go and, you know, vetted or whatever past the Stormer, and then, you know, it's not very refined, this operation, obviously, because
it's compromat.
Yeah, but it's kind of basic. It's a bit crass in the sense, like, because the way it played out, you would, if you were more sophisticated about it, you would be able to do that privately through channels, but the Ukrainians probably don't have those channels within the UK establishment. So the best they could do would be to actually go public with it.
Draw attention by having them light fire.
Have them set fires to it, set fires to his car, whatever, in this associated way type thing, and then hopefully in that crude way send a message to Stormer. The Israelis would be much more subtle about it in the sense where they have the networks within the systems in Europe and the West and stuff, in a lot of places, where when they have that kind of information, you get notified of it through discreet, quiet channels, and then you just play along. The Ukrainians still were a bit more novice-y about the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
But so I don't know what they hope to achieve. Putting pressure on. Maybe they have other information. Maybe they have pictures. Maybe they have videos. Who knows? But you could assume that it's to keep Stormer as the UK Prime Minister on board with Slava Ukraini.
Well, is it Slava Ukraini or is it Israel? Because he's basically the poster child. Him and Macron are leading the Euro counter push against Trump, letting just Russia have at it.
Yeah.
So
are they though?
Maybe we're meant to think it's Ukraine.
Yeah.
That he's being bribed over, but in fact, it's
could be
Israel and Palestinian recognition, and keep them weapons coming.
Yeah.
Because I thought about this last year, because he had before he was elected last summer. That was a Labour Party manifesto, you know. Peace in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere near like Corbyn's stance on it, but still. And he's elected, and within a week, press release, UK government is we're going to reconsider some of our arms licenses with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And within 10 days, those riots happened. And I'm like, hang on a second. Then quietly in early August, we're reconsidering. All weapons go to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not sure, but yeah, for sure, the Israeli Mossad and those kind of people are always on first in any of those things, you know. But it gets complicated when there's more than one agenda you're playing out,
Yeah. There's a couple of stories about...
I want to play this one by Vance. Vance is talking to some university or something. Where is he? Oh no, Naval Academy graduates.
West Point. No, Trump was at West Point this week.
It might have been West Point. Anyway, have a listen to what he says.
But the era of uncontested U.S. dominance is over. Today we face serious threats. And China, Russia, and other nations determined to beat us in every single domain. From spectrum to low Earth orbit to our supply chains and even our communication infrastructure. Technology has lowered the cost of disruption, and so we must be, all of us, not just smarter. We got to make sure that we send our troops to war. We do it with the right tools.
So, as you can see there in my comment, it's like, so the era of US dominance is over. Okay, that's reality, biting, technological progress, development of other countries. The American century is done. It's coming to an end. You're going to have to change and adjust to a new multipolar world because of natural order manifesting itself. You shouldn't try and fight back the tide here. But apparently that's not the response or the approach to this, which is basically talking to military personnel, graduates, the next generation, and talking about them how we're going to have to meet this threat of Russia and China contesting the US with, smarter, better, harder, faster, much more bigly weapons.
Yeah. And y'all got to be smarter now.
Smarter and more aggressive to deal with this threat of, it's like I have a stall in the market and somebody else moves into this stall in the market and I go, okay, I got to deal with this threat. I got to plan a way to burn down their stall. It's like, really? That's what you do whenever, like competition? Is that what you do to the competition? Is that good business practice? Because really we're talking about, Trump's a businessman, right? So we're talking about business practices here in his administration. Is that good business practice that you kind of load up all your bestest weapons and go to war against
your near competitor?
The guy who's put his stall next to yours at the market? Because it looks like he's got some pretty sweet deals. We got to burn down his sweet deals.
Or you could try and...
this is the peace president, right? Huh?
You could try and compete with them on the open market.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why not?
Americans, this is new to them. So they say both things. They cover all the bases. It sounds like they're saying, we're just going to try and compete fairly on the open market with our new near competitors. It also sounds like they're going to nuke them. So...
it's Trump's strategic ambiguity. I might kill you. I might kill you, or I might do a really good deal with you.
Walk softly, carry your big stick. He thinks, Teddy Roosevelt was awesome.
Yeah, but you can't do that, to other peer competitors, like with just as big weapons as you do, Unless you better make sure they understand that you're just pissing in the wind, like that's just for public consumption, that you're not really serious about talking about, confronting them militarily for control of the world. They're all like, Russia and China are like, okay, can we do business? American empire's over. Can we just all, work it out? And America's like, no, we will destroy you. Except we're not really serious about destroying you. Did you get that message? We're not serious. We're just saying that. I don't know why we're saying that, actually. Scare the people? I don't know.
We're just used to saying that.
Actually, no. To tell you why we're doing it, it's the same reason Germany is talking about, rearming, and all that kind of stuff, because it's not actually to go to war with Russia, and we're not talking about going to war with Russia or fighting China or whatever. We're saying this. We're talking about introducing conscription. I think the Germans have talked about introducing conscription in 2026 or something like that.
They're dangling that, but they're serious about rearmament.
But we're not serious about this threat of war. You have to understand, you have to read between the lines. The whole point of us rabble-rousing or saber-rattling over this is in order to build public money for our defense industry in order to stimulate the economy. and sell those weapons. We're not going to use them against Russia. We're going to sell them around the world, but then somebody has to use them, right? Well, I don't know if this will work out, but in the short term, it looks really good. We get a load of money from the public purse. We dump it into our manufacturing companies, creates jobs, stimulates the economy, because it's not working out really well these days. So let's stimulate the economy by taking lots of public money, tax dollars, stuff them into major corporations, employ lots of people, they pay taxes back. It's all this wonderful circle that keeps going around, and the economy grows, right? What do you do with all those weapons you make? I don't know. Give them to someone else so they can shoot them at each other.
Yeah. Historically, though, when the headline reads Germany rearms,
that's
5 years later.
Yeah, well,
I know it's a different world now, but still. So here's Le Monde reporting on it. Germany's Merz promises most powerful conventional army in Europe. Okay, maybe it's just, it says here, the federal government will provide all financial resources that the Bundeswehr needs to become the strongest conventional army in Europe. Our friends and partners expect this from us, and in fact, they are demanding it. You mentioned conscription. They're Boris Pistorius, what is he now? He's finance minister. He said it could be brought back, but conscription, it's more like they had it until like 15 years ago. Compulsory military service for youths. I don't think that means conscription, Ukraine style, press gang.
No, it's normal.
No, yeah. But it is interesting that this announcement by the new German government came in conjunction with the EU program. The EU von der Leyen made big claims a couple of months ago about $800 billion budget for rearming Europe. They called it Rearm Europe. They've decided to back down on calling it Rearm Europe because now it's actually, the program has been approved by EU Council heads. It's going to be called SAFE. Support for ammunition, military financing, and European defense. SAFE. That's more like the kind of globally faggoty liberal terminology we're used to. It's for the children. Rearm Europe was a little bit too strong, Ursula. Anyway, it's not 800. It's more likely 150 billion militarization plan. Although it could just be hot air, because when you read the details, the debt program to provide for the EU bloc's rapid militarization efforts
will take 10 years.
Will take time. The agreement allows EU states to bypass standard voting procedures in the European Parliament to allow member states leverage low interest debt to spend on military equipment, including drones, ammunition, and air defense systems.
To send it to Ukraine. To keep the Ukraine war going for another 10 years.
Well, I don't know if this was a statement, but
it's all money laundering.
Okay, I hope so. But Forbes, I don't have it with me, but Forbes, their headline was crazy. It was like, Germany rearms Europe so that it can go to war with Russia. Like they said it in the headline. I know. It's more likely graft, economics, holding on to power. It's domestic purposes for, as Putin would say. But the fact is, there's a historical precedent for Germany announcing a rearmament, and 5 years later, they're fucking massive. It's a big problem.
But history rhymes, Neil. It doesn't repeat itself.
Doesn't repeat. True.
Those are just echoes of the past. So
yeah. It's actually from March, but the Forbes headline is Germany is rearming for war with Russia.
It's such a minefield. Like, I mean, why? Well, level one is Forbes wrote that headline to get clicks.
Right.
That's, you have to immediately assume that before you read anything else. You know what I mean? And in order, I mean, that immediately downgrades it from pure unvarnished truth to, at least to some extent, to one extent or another, propaganda. And not just propaganda to sell something or to try and deceive people, but just basically to make money for Forbes.
Yes, I know. But is there any precedent for an American, and the author David Axe of the publication Forbes are American? Is there any precedent for Americans going, my God, look at that. The second largest European country is rearming so they can go and crush the first largest country? Because that was functionally what World War II was about. Those two were knocked out of the game, and America became uber alles. In the back of your mind, you got to wonder if that's kind of like the geostrategic, the meta geostrategic wish list of the US. Okay, go for it, guys. You know, have at it.
Yeah, maybe. Although times have changed since then, you know.
Yeah,
that may not be, necessarily a good idea these days, or a worthwhile idea. It may not be something that anybody would benefit from. That America, because obviously if you're going to follow that through, then it's America's doing that. America's like encouraging that. Then saying, what has America to gain from Russia and China, Russia and Germany? At least from, let's say, I don't know. Are you talking Trump here? Or are you talking deep state? You have to be talking deep state because Trump is doing something else, right?
He's doing something else, yeah.
But I mean, it seems to me that Europe is already sufficiently neutered, at least in terms of being subservient to the West, Trump notwithstanding, which he's just apparently a blip in the road and everything will go back to normal.
Oh yeah, totally.
After he's gone. And I don't see, especially this whole business with launching, like the neutering of Russia, it's not about, in the Second World War, it was about take out Russia and Germany, the two biggest, most powerful European countries, and then divide the globe and for America's interests. But since then, obviously, well, you have the effect of that over the ensuing 80 years since the Second World War, where America reigned supreme and Europe was very much in America's pocket or in alliance with America, and that hasn't changed. That it was the suggestion that it might be going a bit south from America's point of view, and you needed to pull Europe back into, or secure Europe in America's sphere of influence. So they launched the Ukraine war and everything that's happened since, against Russia, to demonize Russia, sour forever or for a long time or whatever relations between Russia and Europe, and keep Europe in the American sphere of influence. So that's been achieved.
Yeah. Here's a remarkable.
You don't necessarily need to destroy Germany in the same way that will.
And it's as much as probably democratically, most people are not in sync with this, but still the system of the political strata elites is still sound. So when Trump cut USAID funding to a bunch of, well, one of the knock-on effects was a bunch of media outlets, which were doing the US work in Europe against the rest of the world. They tanked. So there's two stories this week. The British government stepped in to supply the budget to an anti-Putin Russian outlet called Media Zona. And the EU is now going to be the funder of Radio Free Europe, which is the CIA op started to keep Europe on side in the 50s. It's now run by Brussels.
Yeah.
And there's no, it's on paper, there's nothing to do with DC. So that's self-perpetuating. That's remarkable. I've always wondered how cooked are they? They're so cooked that there's an American in their head. Americans gave them their minds, if you like. And they don't need DC to tell them what to do anymore. It's just the program, the operation just keeps going.
Yeah. It's like a prisoner, telling the prison guard, you take a few weeks off. I'll make sure I lock myself in at night.
Yeah.
Give me the keys and I'll lock myself in, and they do.
Yeah. In fact, where are you going with those keys? Get back here. I want Jesus. Yeah. Small note, but it's probably it's been a big deal because people remember those who were awake and aware during COVID were like, oh, Jesus. Well, it just came into effect. The WHO's new pandemic preparedness treaty came into effect last week in Geneva. Whoop-de-doo, let them try and do it again, but you wonder. The gist of it was, of course, that we made mistakes during COVID, so this treaty will ensure that everything will go smoothly next time. What do you mean next time? Well, Macron spoke at it. He was in Geneva, or I think he spoke by video call. And it's got a quote from him. Countries sign off on global pandemic treaty in Geneva. So if you scroll down, it quotes Macron saying, as he promised, Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, tried to nix it or change it. But apparently just abstaining, it doesn't matter. There's a majority vote, and then Slovakia must accept the treaty. I don't know how that works at an international level. Anyway, the treaty was ultimately approved with majority support. Scroll down. Oh, is it truncated or? Euronews shouldn't have. Yeah, there you go. It should be free to read.
Refresh.
There's no paywall. Anyway, Macron said in the course of his...
There you go. We need to act as quickly as possible.
Oh, I should have just clipped it.
Go ahead.
The legally binding... Okay, Macron. It's not a question of if we will have a new pandemic. It's a question of when we'll need it.
When we'll have it.
When we'll have it. And stuff about, getting the vaccines out to more people as quickly as possible, because people really, really, the people really, really want this, and it's really important that we do this, guys.
Sure.
Any other big news? Well, Trump was, yeah. He made me cringe big time. He had South Africa's leader, the White House, and he tried to do a Zelensky on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It probably worked on Americans because, don't know, it's simple, it's racial. The MAGA types can see in South Africa elements of what's going on in their country and the culture war. Mm-hmm. There is no genocide going on in South Africa. Genocide is deliberate state policy, and of course, large numbers of people dying. There's a crime problem in South Africa, but Trump thought this would be smart to haul up. Presumably, they didn't arrange to meet at the White House just to talk about this, and it was going pretty well until Trump said, "Okay, roll the cameras," and he had a video played in the presence of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the video was basically clips of the leader of a minority party in South Africa, Julius Malema, chanting at his own political rallies, "Kill the Boer," which is a song that goes back to apartheid times and beyond, probably to the Boer War. It's not actually a call to go and kill people for political reasons, but Americans kind of like, I mean, if they can be convinced that, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is actually a dog whistle to kill all the Jews, then they can be convinced that a song called "Kill the Boer" from the late 19th century is just that. Anyway, the clip that they played was Julius Malema chanting this And poor Ramaphosa, I mean, Malema isn't even in the fucking government. His party is the 4th largest party in South Africa. And Trump's trying to parlay that relatively fringe, ultra-black nationalist party into, this man next to me is the leader of a genocide. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Okay, so there's another clip. It wasn't just Malema chanting at political rallies. It was the one, have you seen it? It's kind of drone or helicopter footage of a road somewhere in the countryside in Pretoria,
White crosses
with the large white crosses. Then, and he's narrating. So Trump said, "There you see, look, we see a mass grave, a mass grave." And Ramaphosa is looking at it, going, "I have actually not seen this footage," which he probably hadn't. It's not a fucking mass grave, you moron. It's a memorial to dead farmers. And as was explained by people who fact-checked this on X, they said, yes, there's an organization and they're farmers and they put them up. And some of the crosses represent the black farmers who've also been killed by rural gangs rampaging in the countryside. There's other stats, like the farmers don't get it the worst in South Africa. The cities is worse. Farmers also get it, but at a lower rate. South Africa has a crime problem, for sure. Statistically, more black farmers are actually killed than white, but they're farm laborers because statistically 55% of South Africa's farmland is owned by whites because that's how it's been for a couple hundred years. What an embarrassing, I'm embarrassed for them, but maybe I shouldn't be too cringy because I don't think most Americans, it feels good. We feel like we're doing something good for the world. We've shown that man that what's what. Yeah. But it's like really, it's off the reservation. It doesn't correspond to reality.
Yeah. Trump's trying to, it's about his ego basically, and he's trying to rack up as many huge achievements as he can over his term, you know what I mean? So he can cite that I did this, I stopped this, I stopped that, I stopped the other.
Yeah.
It seems to me that's what he's focused on, which is, fair enough, but like if he starts digging and, looking for things that aren't really there to fix, you know what I mean, in certain sense, or blowing them out of proportion in order so that he can say, I solved this huge problem. Well, he has to make it a huge problem if it's not one,
His big thing of the week, though, he did get his big, beautiful tax cuts through.
Yeah. And what about the Golden Dome missile shield?
Oh, that reminds me of Star Wars and Reagan. He's obviously tapping into some of that. He wants to. He
says it was started with Reagan, but they didn't have the money to do it, so he
does have the money, does he?
Yeah. I suggest it was named after his haircut, or just his head, the Golden Dome missile shield.
Well, Israel's got an iron one, so we're going to have a golden one.
Yeah.
There.
Ours is golden. It's made of pure gold. And everybody's going to want to be part of it. It's going to be a planetary missile shield. We're going to extend it over the whole world. Yeah. My Golden Dome will protect you all. Yeah. And he's having on June 14th, so in a few weeks, he's having his first national military parade.
On June the what?
June 14th.
Why?
That's his birthday.
No way. It's on his birthday. Oh,
coincidentally.
I mean, July 4th would make some sense.
Coincidentally.
A military parade in DC.
Yep.
All right.
He liked what Putin did.
Oh, yeah, I bet he does. But Putin's got a whole lot of history behind it.
He wants to do some of that, so he's going to do it on his birthday every year.
You're pulling my leg.
No, it's true. It's his birthday. He picked his birthday to have it.
This is going to be fun.
Just going to tear up the roads and then people complain about them. Yeah, so that's Trump for you. So, I can understand. People's complaints about Trump and all that kind of stuff, but only so far, only to the extent that a person would understand how bad it was beforehand, and that, lesser of two evils type thing, in which case you can't really complain that much about him, but obviously you can still complain about him. He still leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
But the people who really, like Bruce Springsteen and Robert De Niro, those kinds of people who are apoplectic about him, you know, they just are clueless because they don't understand what was happening before him, you know, what the...
And what goes on still around him.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So...
Right.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah. Been a long one.
Some local news was a local wig shop that was robbed.
Oh yeah,
near here during the week.
Tragic.
Yeah, they had to replace all the locks. Anyway, on that hilarious note, we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show. As usual, we'll be back next week to comment on whatever large pile of manure,
sophisticated geopolitical events.
Comment on whatever large pile of manure has been foisted upon us between now and then, of which you can be sure there will be. So until then, thanks for watching, listening, and see you next week.
Thanks for watching. Bye all.
Can't stop the signal now.